Hello and welcome everyone to this presentation where we're going to review word order following a question that I received from Amin. He asked, which one is correct? I'll repeat the question for you again, or I'll repeat the question again for you. So he wanted to know where the word again goes. And he wanted me to explain the correct answer following the who, what, how, where, when, why rule, right? So because he asked me about this rule, let's review that rule first. This is the most common English word order. Who, what, how, where, when, and why. Now, it's rare that one sentence will include all these elements. For example, I've got an example sentence here for you. It doesn't include the element how, but includes the others. So who, my cousin, what, which is always the verb, went, there is no how, where, to Athens, when, last week, and why, to attend a conference. Let's look at another example where we have the element how and not the element when. Again, who, John, what, speaks, how, quickly, where, at meetings. We don't have a when, but we have a why, because he gets nervous. So just remember that this is the common English word order. This is what most native speakers follow, but not always. Now, there is one important exception to remember about this order we've just looked at, and that is with verbs of movement. When you have a verb of movement like go, come, drive, travel, etc., the where must go before the how. And that's so that we have the destination right after the verb. So don't say my cousin went by plane to Athens, but switch the where and the how. My cousin went to Athens by plane. Where? How? That's the only exception to the rule that we have just seen. Now, the most common mistake that I notice happens with putting when in the wrong place. Sometimes I hear you, my students, say the where after the when. So saying things like, my cousin went last week to Athens. Try to avoid that. That does sound strange. Always, if you have both where and when, put where before when. My cousin went to Athens last week. Another mistake that can happen is confusing the places of when and why. Again, sometimes I hear this. My cousin went to Athens to attend a conference last week. Again, that would be a mistake. It's when and then why. My cousin went to Athens. When? Last week. Why? To attend the conference. So that's that order that you need to remember. You will hear sometimes native speakers changing that order, and don't think that, oh, then this is wrong. This is the correct word order, but there are reasons for changing that. You will always be correct if you follow this. So if in doubt, remember the order and follow this one. Now let's look at something that I need to mention. You can emphasize the time, the place, and the reason by putting it at the start of a sentence. And the most common element to start a sentence with is when. So very often you may hear, last week, my cousin went to Athens, or yesterday, this happened, tomorrow, this will happen. So, but the other two elements, that is place and reason, can also go to the beginning, but not very common. So we could say, in Athens, restaurants stay open all day, or to avoid getting sunburned, he wore a lot of sun cream. Notice that when we write these, we need to separate the element with a comma from the rest of the verb. So last week, my cousin went to Athens. And your voice also emphasizes that. So it's not really good to say last week my cousin went. It's last week with the emphasis on that element at the beginning, and then my cousin went to Athens. Now that brings us to the next point, which is the components of what. In the example sentences we had at the beginning, we only had the verb, like I think the verbs were, speaks and went. But you know that a lot of verbs are transitive. That means that they need objects. So, and there are two types of objects. One is a direct object and the other one is an indirect object. And the difference, of course, is that the indirect object has a preposition. So, for example, in a sentence like Joe explained the situation to his partner, the direct object is the situation and the indirect object is to his partner. And what is really important is to keep this order. First, the direct object, then the indirect object. So don't switch them around. That's the most common mistake I hear. Saying like Joe explained to his partner the situation. Always try and remember verb, direct object, indirect object. Except, as always in English, there can be an exception when you have a WH clause as your direct object. For example, a sentence like Joe explained how to balance the accounts to his partner. That would be the normal one, direct first, how to balance the accounts, to his partner, the indirect second. But because this direct object has become very long, sometimes it ends up at the end. And you could end up with Joe explained to his partner how to balance the accounts. That's the only exception when you have a WH clause, like who, starting with who, what, where, when, etc. Otherwise, verb, direct, indirect. So another common mistake then becomes separating these the verb from its objects by adverbs. For example, saying things like Joe explained calmly the situation to his partner, or Joe explained the situation calmly to his partner. Don't keep the verb and the objects together, and then come the adverbs. So Joe explained the situation, direct object, to his partner, indirect object, and then the adverb calmly. Something that I hear very often is putting adverbs like very much between the verb and its direct object. Must completely avoid that. Sounds very strange in English to say, we liked very much her presentation. It's we liked, then the object, her presentation, and then very much. If you want to emphasize the adverb, especially an ly adverb, you can put it before the verb. So you can say, Joe calmly explained the situation to his partner. Anyway, the rule, and I repeat it, and that's the really important one, is to keep the verb and the direct object always together. Then if there is an indirect object. So that brings us to the question that Eamon had asked. Which one is correct then? So think about it. Is it I'll repeat the question for you again, or I'll repeat the question again for you? From what I've just said, don't separate these elements from each other. So keep them together. Repeat verb, the question, direct object, for you, indirect object, again at the end. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. I hope it's clarified some of these challenging questions about word order in English for you. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. For more on this topic, click here. Remember to also check out my complete online course, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and happy studies!